protest I showed are in 3 locations: Chile, Lebanon, India. In this episode of Orator of Apocalypse, episode 10, we are going to examine the raging tide of anger and hatred. The whole world is angry for us after the emergence of communism, after liberalism emerged and did away with the last vestiges of feudalism, then extreme wealth inequality as it was prior to capitalism. During the days of feudalism, this saw the rise of communism, and it seemed ever since the 1970s the neoliberalism push is receiving the red rise. As response to it, we are seeing massive wealth inequality and the global elite, where it is one world as was during the Tower of Babel. The raise of the tears and the global raise of Christian, the raise of the wheat, increasing persecution. This is the great harvest ever since the 01-02-2018 blood moon occurred, and after that Vladimir Putin announced 1 month later his new arsenal of nuclear weapons, and various nuclear armed treaties have collapsed. Anyway, it looks like we are going to see more protests around the world. This is a clip from RT Arab Spring 2.0 uprising of protests in the Middle East.
It's a changing of leaders for 2 nations, Lebanon and Iraq. This all happening, however, while the 2 countries are left to deal with financial problems, protests, all which threatens to sink their economies. Now in Lebanon, the designation of its new prime minister, Hassan Diab, a former minister and university professor, has failed to spark enthusiasm, showing yet again the depths of divisions across the fractured political spectrum, and with the public that has little faith in its leaders. So for more on this, we turn to former Pentagon official Michael Maloof. Mike, I'm sure you got a lot to say about this, but first things first, how does America see these 2 countries that they've had their hands in, especially, with Iraq?
Well, both countries are pivotal for the United States to try and stem Iran's influence. However, I mean, we have troops in Iraq. We just provided about $100 million, I believe, to the Lebanese army, contrary to what Congress really wanted, thinking that there's a separation between the army and Hezbollah. In some respects there is, but they do have a pact, so that if there is an attack on Lebanon, Hezbollah will assist the Lebanese army. In fact, they're better armed than the Lebanese army. Having said all that,
you were talking to me about Lebanon earlier.
Yeah, having been there many times, I've seen it. I mean, the problems that are occurring there today just didn't occur overnight. This has been manifesting for years, and notwithstanding the people there, the difficulties, the government is virtually inert. It cannot function, and I think people realize that, and the corruption is just unbelievable, and the basic services for people today there is awful. I mean, I've seen salt water running through the taps of houses. Garbage has been left on the streets, and it's just it's deplorable. And people finally are saying we're fed up, and and a lot of this has to do with what they perceive to be Hezbollah influence in the area, brought on by Iranian influence. And they don't think Iran has really helped out, even though after 2006, Iran basically rebuilt all of South Lebanon, South Beirut, which is all very Shia controlled. But you're seeing more of the Sunni and the Christians, along with Shia, rising up and basically saying they've had enough in Lebanon. And they're not happy with any of the choices, because they feel that the same old fossils are running things there. I mean, that represent the Sunnis, the Shia, and the Christians. I mean, they just never go away, and they've been there for years. And people just want to change. The same in Iraq, where they just want Iraq back for the Iraqi people. They don't want the United States in. They don't want Iran in. However, Iran still maintains influence. You're going to, Sistani, who is the main cleric there in Najaf, He is their he is their spiritual leader of the Shia. He hasn't tossed out Iranian influence. He's not going to attack it, but he wants it diminished. He wants the Iraqi people to, figure out what leadership they want. Again, they've had these same old people coming back time and time again. The corruption is there. The basic services are not there, and you have, given the oil revenues that come in, it's not showing up for the everyday people, and we're seeing that in both of these areas. The feeling is that Iran is able to cast its influence, but once it has, it's unable to manage things properly, and now they just don't want anybody in those countries. Although the United States the United States is trimming back its military forces in Iraq somewhat, but they're concentrating more in the Anbar, the Sunni region, as opposed to the Shia region of Iraq.
And with all of this there, because we do have military,
Sure.
in this region as well, and all over the world. Have we helped or hurt this whole problem that's
Well, I
been
think we've
festering?
helped aggravate the whole situation. A lot of them are basically people that we've helped put in place. We help organize their government, like in Iraq. It's but the people have just had enough of who has been chosen because of the corruption. The corruption is just unbelievable in those areas. And once these people come to power, all they think about is themselves and how they can assist themselves. And that's got to change. There's also talk that this might be what could be a second Arab Spring that seems to be emerging, because you're seeing this sweeping the region, and this makes those countries extremely vulnerable to ISIS or Al-Qaeda coming back in and filling that void because of the chaos. And that's the danger that we're seeing. And a lot of it, I know the United States at one point blamed the Russians for instigating protests in Lebanon. Well, that's just nonsense. That's just nonsense. People there have had enough, and we've seen it over and over again.
Former Pentagon official Michael Maloof.
Yep.
Michael, always great to have your insight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So anyway, guy, I am going to leave you with a clip about the start of Great Tribulation, the sixth seal, 0102 2018 to August of 2021 AD. By this time the 10 horns, the 7 kings of Western Roman Empire, turn on Israel to end the Palestine-Israel conflict. Then judgment of Matthew 23 against Israel, the judgment of Israel. Then the war with Iran. Hezbollah will rain 60 to 100,000 missiles down on Israel. Then Revelation 9 and 16, sixth trumpet and vial. The conquest of the Galilee, which prompts US and EU soldiers, the fourth kingdom, to be defeated in the battle of Armageddon in Israel. Anyway, I will leave you with a clip about how the start of the Great Tribulation. The blood moon that marks the start of the Great Tribulation, and some evidence of us entering the Cold War condition. Revelation 6, King James Version KJV. 12 And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and, lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. 13 And the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs, when she is shaken of a mighty wind. 14 And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. 15 And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man, hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains. 16 And said to the mountains and rocks, Fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. 17 For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Seal 6, earthquake followed by lunar eclipse, the 31st of January, the 1st of February 2018.
super blue blood moon will be visible in Colorado this week. Experts say on Wednesday, Denver will be one of the first cities in the U.S. to see what will be a combination of a supermoon, a blood moon, and a blue moon. That means the moon will be closer to Earth and brighter than normal. It will also take on a reddish tint and will be the second full moon in a month.
It's been about 5 years since major news outlets started hyping each and every supermoon, so it's understandable if you've stopped paying attention. Still, the one Wednesday, January 31st, may be worth your while. A supermoon is simply when the moon is full, while it's also closest to Earth. Technically, it's the biggest and brightest the moon can look, but it's hard to notice that difference with the naked eye. But this one will also happen during a total lunar eclipse, when the moon passes through Earth's shadow. The shadow turns the moon a rusty red color, which is usually nicknamed a blood moon, making this a super blood moon. This will also be the second full moon in the same month, aka a blue moon. So what you'll see Wednesday is a super blue blood moon, the first in 150 years.
Luke.
The full moon on January 31st is going to be extra special. A combination of circumstances means a super blue blood moon will appear in the sky. Oh, and also a total lunar eclipse will take place at the same time. So let's break down this rare astronomical phenomenon. We all know what a full moon is. It means the moon rises at sunset and sets at sunrise. The moon will also be closer to the Earth on that night, making it appear larger than usual. That's what makes it a supermoon. Aside from being a supermoon, it will also be a blue moon because it's the second full moon in January, and that is unusual. There are roughly 29.5 days between full moons, so it's not common for two full moons to fit into a 30 or 31 day month. When it happens, a moon is called a blue moon. It's not going to look blue or anything, that's just the name. It's uncommon once in a blue moon. All of this coincides with a lunar eclipse, which happens when a full moon lines up perfectly with the Earth and the sun. The Earth's shadow totally blocks the sunlight, which would normally reflect off of the moon, and then the totally eclipsed moon appears reddish in color, which is why some people actually call it a blood moon. You'll be able to see it as the moon sets. The eclipse will be partial in the eastern U.S., but on the west coast, you'll be able to see more of the show, and actually Hawaii can see the whole thing. The last time a super blue blood moon eclipse happened was in 1886. So in other words, this has been 150 years in the making.
March the 1st, 2018. 1 month later, Putin threatens the West, the USA, under the reborn Roman Empire, fulfilling the prophecy that nations shall rise against nations, kingdoms and against kingdoms.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I want to talk to you about something very serious, because I think in the midst of all this foolishness about gun control, we've got something much, much more dangerous. Some years ago, during the Reagan administration, the Lord spoke to me very clearly, and he said, communism will fall in the Soviet Union, but then Russia will be the most dangerous. Well, I saw it fall, I announced it, and people kind of look at you like, oh, you're crazy, and it happened. But we haven't seen the danger yet. But today, Vladimir Putin has announced that the Soviets have nuclear missiles capable of going 20 times the speed of sound. He has got water-launched drones that are nuclear-powered. He has cruise missiles that are nuclear-powered. He has weapons that he said cannot be intercepted. Now, in the old days, the old guys that ran the Soviet Union understood the United States had overwhelming force, and that we had what was called mutually assured destruction. It was called MAD. And we knew that we could destroy them and that they had enough military nuclear weapons to destroy us. But nobody in the recent years has actually talked about nuclear war. This man has talked about nuclear war, and he says his missile defense would make NATO defense useless.
Well, Putin made his announcement in a televised speech, and he said one of his new weapons has practically unlimited range. Gary Lane brings us the story.
The Russian president announced his country has developed a new array of more powerful strategic weapons, some that cannot be intercepted. Putin talked of the new missile arsenal during his State of the Russian Union speech. Among the missiles developed, a new ballistic rocket called the Sarmat.
Sarmat is a very powerful, mighty weapon. Due to its characteristics, even prospective anti-ballistic missile systems would not be an obstacle for it.
The power, range, and number of warheads the Sarmat rocket can carry far exceeds the previous generation of Russian long-range missiles. Also developed are a new nuclear-powered cruise missile and a nuclear-powered underwater drone that Putin says would be immune from enemy intercept. Defense experts say, if true, the technological breakthroughs may dramatically increase Russian military capabilities and possibly lead to a new global arms race. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Ladies and gentlemen, the old guys that used to run Russia wouldn't think of going to war with America. Putin feels threatened, but he is a psychopath, and he would be willing to risk war. We're talking about something very serious, and I want you to know the Lord spoke to me about it years and years ago, and I want to repeat it. Communism would fall in the Soviet Union, and it did. It fell. You remember Gorbachev, Glasnost, and all that stuff. It fell. It fell because we had so much technological superiority, and Putin has felt like Russia has been snubbed because it's not powerful enough. Now he's flexing his muscles. And what will happen? Syria, we might decide it's time to take out that vicious Assad because of his chemical weapons. Well, Putin's going to say, don't do it because I'm their defender. And we're going to run the risk of nuclear war. We can't push him but so far anymore because he's got the capability, or will have. We need desperately to have some intelligence to find out whether they're telling the truth or not. But it's extremely serious.
On March the 1st, President Putin announced a new generation of weapons vastly superior to anything developed around the world.
У России такое оружие есть.
A hypersonic system, an ICBM with unlimited range, weapons that can fly through dense layers of the atmosphere, a nuclear-powered cruise missile, underwater drones, a unique combat laser complex. That got everyone talking about an arms race and that deadly Russian missile. But from Russia's point of view, it's the one that feels threatened and wants to restore nuclear parity. So how does that work? And what did Putin mean when he said,
Нас никто не слушал. Послушайте сейчас.
To be clear, nuclear parity came as a result of an arms race. It was provoked by the first and so far only nuclear strike in history, when the US dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. Estimates put the total number of casualties at up to 450,000. By 1949, the USSR had its own nuclear weapon ready. By 1952, the US tested the first thermonuclear device. A year later, the Soviet Union followed suit. Both sides began to develop ballistic missiles in an attempt to get ahead of each other. The US installed nuclear weapons in Turkey, and the USSR put missiles in Cuba. It was followed by the Cuban crisis, which saw the world teeter on the brink of nuclear war, until Moscow and Washington realized there could be no winners. That's when the period of détente came about. By the early 1990s, it seemed the tension between the two countries was over. It was a time of promises, although some would prove empty over time. NATO famously promised Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev that it would not move an inch to the east.
Даже такие были выражения, как это было у Бейкера, у секретаря, что мы и на 10 сантиметров не двинемся в интересах НАТО или что-то.
Recently declassified documents on the 1990 negotiations proved Russia's account is accurate.
If we maintain a presence in a Germany that is part of NATO, there would be no extension of NATO's jurisdiction for forces of NATO 1 inch to the east.
There would be no effort to exclude anyone, and there would be no step taken at this time to push anyone ahead of others.
In 1994, the US changed its mind about expanding east.
We're going to move forward on this, but I'd never spring this on you.
But over the past 18 years, NATO's been joined by Hungary, Poland, the Czech Republic, Bulgaria, Romania, Slovakia, Albania, Croatia, Montenegro, as well as the former Soviet republics of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. NATO is now at Russia's doorstep. Here is an online meme on how Russia moved its country too close to NATO's military bases. Furthermore, the US moved its missile defenses closer to Russia's borders, another promise broken by Washington. In 2002, the US pulled out of the ABM treaty signed decades before when the Soviet Union was still in place. What is missile defense? It enables one party to launch its own missiles and intercept any counterstrike. It could guarantee victory in a potential war. Of course, NATO and the US say their missile defenses are not against Russia, but against Iran and North Korea. But the locations tell another story. Missile defense installations were placed in Poland, Romania, California, and Alaska. They're also planned for Japan and South Korea. Missile defense ships patrol the seas close to Russian territory.
Создаются системы, элементы систем противоракетной обороны, что нас очень беспокоит, и мы постоянно об этом говорим в течение 10 лет. Это разрушает стратегический баланс в мире.
The balance is disrupted, and Russia, which hasn't ramped up its missile defenses like the US, is facing a deadly danger.
Вы же все понимаете, о чем идет речь. Чего молчите-то? Вы все молчите. Ситуация усугубляется, ведь это подталкивает гонку вооружений, новый виток создает. Это же очевидная вещь. Вот мы все время думаем, а как ответить? Мы думаем, совершенствовать систему, значит, преодоления систем противоракетной обороны. Вот это и есть виток гонки вооружений.
Russia says it was forced to come up with a weapon capable of bypassing missile defenses in order to restore nuclear parity. The Kinjal MiG-31 can launch hypersonic missiles that can travel at more than 10 times the speed of sound. Thanks to that and their unpredictable trajectory, they are unstoppable. It's an unrivaled weapon. The US doesn't plan to test its hypersonic weapon until 2019. The avant-garde hypersonic vehicle can fly at up to 20 times the speed of sound. An ICBM will take it to an altitude of several dozen kilometers, from where it can dive headfirst back to Earth at top speed with aircraft-like maneuverability, dodging any missile defenses. In contrast, when other existing ballistic missiles re-enter the atmosphere, they fly at a preset trajectory, making them easy targets for ABM systems. Sarmat might seem like an ordinary ICBM, but its range is much longer. The legendary Topol-M missiles can only take the shortest route through the ABM systems. Sarmat can travel via the North or the South Pole where there's no missile shield, and it will still hit its target. But most importantly, Sarmat is a heavy missile capable of carrying more than 20 warheads. That's 5 times more than previous generation missiles. The Burevestnik nuclear-powered cruise missile is a unique weapon. It's basically the same as an American Tomahawk. Whereas the Tomahawk's range is limited to 2,500 kilometers because of fuel constraints, Russia's new missile can fly indefinitely. It can take any path to avoid missile defenses. Just like Poseidon underwater drones. Similar to the regular drones we're used to, except these are submarine launched and travel at incredible speeds towards their targets under the sea. They run so deep that no equipment can track them. Even if detected, their high speed prevents them from being intercepted. The new weapons can work together to neutralize any existing missile defense systems. Kinjal can destroy ground-based ABM systems. Poseidon drones take care of those at sea. Then, the Sarmat, Avangard, and cruise missiles can be launched towards their target, bypassing any remaining barriers. On top of that, there's also a combat laser complex, Peresvet, which is unique because it almost instantly delivers an energy beam to a target and has an unlimited battle reserve. Developing new weapons is not a belligerent move, rather a move to restore parity. Perhaps this time the call for a balance of force and fair treatment all round will be heard.
Нас никто не слушал. Послушайте сейчас.
Published on February the 1st, 2000. Rick Sanchez, Cold War is back on. 36,537 views. 785.48 share. RT America. Published on February the 1st, 2019. Rick Sanchez discusses the Trump administration's decision to abandon the historic INF treaty, struck by as President Reagan and Soviet Premier Gorbachev in 1988. There is no evidence that Russia is not in compliance with the treaty, but nothing now prevents the US and Russia from developing intermediate-range nuclear weapons. RT America's Sarah Montes-Droke reports for the news with Rick Sanchez on the roots and significance of the INF Treaty, a decades-old cornerstone of global security. Then Dan Cohen discusses reactions from Trump's opposition in Congress and around the country, and RT's Danielle Hawkins reports from